Who had been there, they can say that this is a beautiful masjid, and I was coming back and asking the brothers, who built the masjid and how long did it take. And his first thing was that he said it took 20 years to build the masjid there. So I feel, alhamdulillah, we have a lot to be thankful for the short time in which we were able to build. But that's not the topic of my short Khatira here. As we turn to the news, as we turn to the emails, and we're flooded with a lot of information about what is happening in Gaza, and our heart goes out to the people of the suffering on the flight and that's going on there. And one is left to wonder, what it is that we can do as Muslims, and what is our obligation. A lot has been talked about as to what we can do, but I wanted to share a perspective. Most of the discussions that we've had are, inshallah, let's make dua, let's donate money. And last Sunday, I was driving with my son to the masjid, and we were talking about this topic, and I was asking him, what it is that, Zayan, you would do about the situation. And he took blank, he had a blank look on his face, and I can sense that maybe we could make dua. And I feel like the purpose of my reminder on this topic today was really to provide another perspective. And I would go out on a limb, I'm not a scholar, and say that very often dua by itself does not make a lot of change or impact by itself. To prove to you that, if you look at the Battle of Badr, the Prophet ﷺ prayed all night long and made dua, but that alone was not to change the outcome. It was the fact that he was preparing to make an impact through doing what he can to make a change to the situation. And a lot of times I feel like we put a lot of emphasis on what dua gets recited in which prayer, and we have in this community, not only us, but also a lot of the youth. And we have to be thinking about what it is that we want, what values we want them to grow when they are faced with these challenges that we as Muslim communities face. And I wanted to share a few perspectives on this. And first and foremost, what the people are going through in Gaza is injustice on multitude of dimensions. One, they have been kicked out of their land, which is rightfully theirs. They have been kept as captives, besieged into a narrow space and not left to carry on their life. And now there's overwhelming force with which people are being killed indiscriminately. Whether it's hospitals, whether kids playing on the beach, whether it is, and a disproportionate amount of children are being killed. And this is really unacceptable. So what do we have to do? And I would say it's kind of three things. The first thing is that we have to understand the context and the situation in which we are living. We live in a world where it is really what we can do is get the mind share, get the point of view out, and we have to use the tools that are available to us. And if you look at an example of this from the Seerah, when Muslims went for the first hijrah to Abyssinia, what did the Meccans do? The Meccans did was the tools of the time, which was they went to Abyssinia with a diplomatic initiative to expel the Muslims out of Abyssinia, which was Ethiopia. And what did Ja'far do? He engaged in a dialogue to make sure that his point of view was heard. MashaAllah, we're all very educated people here. What are we doing, beyond raising your hands to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make sure that our point of view is heard? There are lots of tools that are available to us. If you look at the Middle East uprising that happened, it was all started with Facebook and Twitter, the blogosphere. And we have all these tools that are available to us. We can influence the policies. Perhaps you may not see an immediate impact, but you can write to the newspapers, change the public perception of the thinkers and shakers in the community. There are lots of things that we can do as a community, and are we able to take that step and do it? Are we limiting ourselves and confining ourselves to du'as that we can make on the four walls of this masjid? Which I'm not diminishing it, at the same time I feel like there's an overemphasis on it. And a lot of times the changes happen through individuals. Small initiative that over time generates big impact. And I'll give you a number of examples of this. How many of you know Red Cross? The Red Cross is a massive relief organization. It started because of efforts of one or a few women during the American Civil War. They saw a lot of people that are being injured and started an organization to take care of them. Out of that was born Red Cross. How many of you know an organization called MAD, Mothers Against Drunken Driving? Happened to a couple of mothers, two mothers, whose children were killed in a road crash by drunken drivers. And they started the effort to make an impact. We have to think about what it is that the skills that we want to give to our children to really figure out when they grow up, what it is that we want them to do to change not only this injustice, but other unfair things that happen in the society that they grow up with. And finally, I would say that a lot of the impact that we would have and where we can learn to make a difference before we can impact the world affairs that sometimes are far beyond our reach are really the local initiatives that we can do. Most of the politicians who end up being the senators and congressmen and presidents really start their career serving in the local school boards, civic organizations. So let us first think about what it is, the civic duty that we have, and what it is that we want to impart to our children. Our children don't have the barriers of language, the inhibitions that we have, and especially for those of us who use the podium here, we have to think about the fact that we have a generation of Muslims that are growing up, and the message that we give it to them must be applicable to us as well as to them. That's the reminder that I want to do, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.